Hello, I'm Dan Moyane. Welcome to Connect Africa Moyane, where we seek to enrich people's minds by sharing African experiences and stories that hopefully can contribute to a transforming continent. I'm talking to somebody who, unlike many of us in the world, can claim that he's been on top of the world. Some of you might know who I'm talking about, and others might not know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Saray Khumalo. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Of course, we are in the COVID-19 world. We wear masks, we sanitize, we social distance. But I think for the benefit of the conversation, especially for those who are deaf, who are able to follow us, we can remove our mask now as we start our conversation. You've been on top of the world. As I said now, I've never been on top of the world. What was the feeling like being on top of Mount Everest?
Bradan, quite a humbling experience. It was, for me, a lot more emotional than anything. Because I had attempted 3 times before. This was the 4th time. But also realizing that, the doors that I assumed were being closed in my face were actually literally little doors. And this was my time. The gate was wide open. And I, from Norway, was able to step on top of the world and above the clouds. And I say that because my mother always used to say the sky is the limit. And I found myself above the clouds, literally, and the clouds beneath me. And it's really a testament to say it is possible.
You're right up there. And that was in 2019. We'll talk a little bit more about that in our conversation and how you get there. But being the first black woman as well has got some significance. And I know you've been talking a lot about that experience since 2019. But I want to take you back first.
Yes.
The girl, Sarah.
Yes.
Did you ever dream or ever imagine you'll be on top of the world one day?
No. I actually didn't even know about Everest and climbing growing up. But I was always, so I'm one of 7 girls raised by a single mother with the support of grandparents. But I was the tomboy of the lot, always checking out what's happening, always playing outside.
Climbing trees?
Oh, trees, and my grandfather had a hill behind the house. I remember actually playing on top of that hill and looking at everybody's rooftops and wondering what's beyond there. But never in my wildest dreams.
That was just a play thing.
Absolutely.
Not that you were planning that one day you'd be on top of some roof and you got to the top. They say Everest is the roof of the world.
It is, indeed, it is. It's such an honor to have been able to do that.
So growing up, I mean, you grew up like any other little girl.
Yes.
You are one of 7 siblings.
7, yes.
As you say, there must be challenges. There must be. There's 7 kids.
Yes,
Although the grandparents are there, I'm sure it's challenging.
Yeah, it was always. I mean, it was girls. It was, like I said, I was the tomboy of the lot. And whenever anybody, especially when I moved to stay with all my sisters, if anybody attempted to bully my sisters, I was the one that was going to be the defender. So I used to take care of that.
So you're the one where there was anything at school to say, I'm going to tell my sister.
Exactly.
I'm going to tell my sister.
I was one of those.
And then Sarah walks in there, there's peace
and
immediately.
There's peace, then they knew that, they need to stay away.
Yeah. Was there any subject as you were in school that sort of attracted you a lot, or you were just like most of us when we're at school? It's a subject.
Yeah. So maths and sciences were something that I liked a lot, but it's also because my primary school was completely in French. So when I moved to Lusaka to stay with my mother, everything was in English, and I just struggled with transitioning from French to English. And what was easier for me was numbers. So absolutely liked
You don't speak French today?
No, I'm not good anymore, but I understand. Yeah.
But I mean, growing up in a big family, I must say,
Yes.
it's a big family.
It is.
Presents itself some challenges. Were there some lessons when you look back today?
Yes.
Were there some things that you look back and said, I think that's where it came from?
Yes. My mother, reminding us all the time that it didn't matter that we were girls, we could do anything. And that's where the sky is the limit thing came from. But also knowing that, we are better as a collective. We can fight in the house, but when we are outside, we are in the on the same team, so, which is something that happens on the mountain. You know that, yes, I trained alone, I came alone here, but I need other people to be able to get to the top of the world.
Teamwork, is it something that you apply in
Absolutely.
your professional life today?
Definitely. Teamwork is the dream work. Absolutely. And,
Yeah,
and
and
nobody gets to the top alone.
But it's interesting how when we're growing up, some of the values
Yes.
or practices that
Yeah.
are imparted to us, sometimes unintentionally or as a way
Yes.
of life, we think, but later on we see the benefit.
Yeah, one of the big ones that I haven't mentioned is having been raised by my grandparents who were missionaries. My grandfather used to go and preach around. My grandmother had a big garden that she made us, plant maize, beans and vegetables. And we would get what we need, and the rest she would find people in church that needed it, and she would redistribute. She was such a giver. And my grandfather always used to say, if you do not live a life of service, that's a life wasted. As a youngster, you don't really think about, what is he talking about? And that's something that saved my life. It's one of the reasons I don't just climb to go and take a picture on top of the world. I climb with a purpose. And I started that Summits with a Purpose initiative exactly because of that.
This is so good to hear, because I was wondering where that came from. But we'll talk about the giving side of Saray Khumalo, because as you say, you don't just climb. Yes, you climb. There's a physical exertion, there's a preparation, but you've got a purpose.
Absolutely.
And now I'm hearing that it comes all the way back from when you used to plant gardens. Do you still do that today?
I do have a small garden, not to the extent that my grandmother did.
Urban life is restrictive, eh?
Restrictive. I mean, she was a vegetarian, and most of what she needed, she planted. And now Woolies probably needs to give me shares.
Like many people in urban South Africa and big cities, they'll go to Woolies. Anything when you look back, you think, if I had a different upbringing, this is something I would change?
I don't think so. I think growing up in the setup that I did, I mean, we didn't have much, but we shared.
Was it a semi-rural setup, or was it in Lusaka, the capital of Zambia?
So with my mother, it was in Lusaka. Yeah, it was always in township setting, really. But it was about giving back, more so with my grandparents than it was with my mother. So with my grandparents, it was always in a community of church people. It's people that knew everybody's business. You couldn't be naughty outside and think, your grandparents are not watching. Anyone would discipline you out there, and come and tell at home. If you come and tell, you're beaten again, So it was that kind of setting. But it was also a setting of saying, I'm not on my own. I can only, if I make it, I need to make it with everybody else.
So there's nothing you would change about that upbringing,
Absolutely
or you think
nothing.
Was missing that could have helped even you further as you were growing up as this little girl in Lusaka?
Absolutely not, because I grew up with, my mother had people renting. We used to call them guerrillas, We had diverse people from diverse communities. It's helped me accept people irrespective of what language they speak, where they come from. I really appreciate my upbringing and the fact that I traveled a lot. During holidays, I would go to Tanzania to visit my aunties. I would go to the DRC, where, when my grandparents were still there. I would go to Zimbabwe with my aunt. So I feel that although we didn't have much, there was a lot of experiences that I was exposed to.
It's like inclusivity was woven into your upbringing. And
absolutely.
It's your DNA today.
Yes.
I mean, I grew up in Soweto, and in Soweto, because of the apartheid system, you had people from all across South Africa and from across the borders of South Africa. People who came into work in the mines from Mozambique, from Zimbabwe, from Lesotho. So I also grew up being exposed to all these different languages and cultures. And it's something that I think is beautiful. My heart really goes out to people who only grew up with one type of culture, because it has restricted their way they look at the world.
Absolutely.
Is that the feeling you have?
It is exactly the feeling. But in addition to that, growing up with very strong women, my mother coming to say, you can do anything. It doesn't matter that you're a girl. It doesn't matter where you are. Just focus on where you need to be. And I think that for me is something that's liberating and has helped me a lot.
Yeah. Was KK the president when you were growing up in Zambia?
Yes. Yes.
And how was that? I mean, I'm asking this because for many of us growing up in the 60s and the 70s, KK was one of the heroes of the father of Zambia.
Yeah.
I mean, with the independence,
Yes.
and also one of the leaders of the so-called frontline states
Yeah.
that stood up together with Moyane,
Yes.
Julius Nyerere,
Yes.
the likes of Samora Machel in Mozambique against the apartheid regime.
Correct.
For just your memories of KK.
Yeah. So I wasn't into politics much, except for interactions with the guerrillas. But what I remember about KK is the handkerchief, and the respect that
The white handkerchief.
The white handkerchief, absolutely. Thank
We
you for
all
that
remember
correction.
the white handkerchief.
And the fact that even when there was a few letter bombs at the post office, and people started pushing back to say,
and some attacks by the South African Defence Force in Lusaka.
Yes, he just stood up. He said, if other people around us are not liberated, then we are not
can't
free.
be free.
We are not
he
free.
used to repeat that a lot. Those
I
speeches.
remember very vividly.
You said guerrillas. Are you referring to ANC freedom fighters
Yes,
who are based in
ANC.
Lusaka?
Yes, we call them guerrillas. ANC freedom fighters.
Guerrillas. Yeah.
So they occupied. They were renting some of my mother's houses. So.
And you used to give them vegetables.
No.
Or sell to them vegetables.
They were renting our houses.
They were renting your
Yes.
houses. Okay, that's
renting.
good. But I mean, that you're a young girl, you see these foreigners coming around there, the guerrillas. Did you wonder, what is this guerrilla? What is guerrilla about?
I learned a lot from them.
Okay, tell me.
Some of them would go. I actually learned to play chess from one of them. They would come and then they would go to Russia or disappear. You would know that they went to Russia when they come back. And I started learning about politics, about what's happening at home. They would talk about their families. Some of them were relatively young as probably maybe 2 or 3 years older than me. So I've always been a storyteller, and I loved listening to stories. So I used to listen to a lot of their stories.
Sarah, you must write a book one day.
Some of them were not friendly, though.
No, but that's life. I mean, that's life. I mean, if you think about the age group of 1976, I mean, I'm thinking back then, I was 16 years old in 1976 when we marched with the schools in Soweto against the use of Afrikaans as a medium of instruction. And then that led to a bigger protest and uprising, and hundreds of school children were killed. I mean, we were like 16, 15, 17, 18. Tsietsi Mashinini was our leader. He ended up crossing the border into exile into Botswana. So those guerrillas you used to talk to, they were like probably 19, 20, 21. So you can understand that. But was it an enriching experience for you?
It was, definitely. So for my mother, it was a strategy, because as soon as she rented the house around close to us, to them, we were never bothered, because everybody used to be afraid that they've got guns. So we were not bullied. So they were a security
the
feature.
Are always armed, aren't they? Okay,
they were
beautiful.
A security feature, but it was very enriching. It helped me read more into politics, African politics.
Yeah, because you said, as you were a young girl, you didn't really much know about politics. But later, that interaction.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So did you find that you got more closer and closeness to South Africa through that experience with the ANC freedom fighters?
Yes, absolutely. So growing up with my grandfather when I was younger, it was all about Bible heroes, And then when I went to Lusaka, for the first time we had a TV, black and white TV. Then it was these TV cartoon heroes. And my interactions with the guerrilla guys, I started looking at politics, why is Kaunda saying this? And looking at Nyerere and reading up books, and that changed my perspective.
And the 80s were very tough in Southern Africa for many people who might not know, because P.W. Botha became Prime Minister in South Africa. He was known as the crocodile, the groot crocodile in Afrikaans, the big crocodile, because he was really, really right-wing and conservative. And he declared a state of emergency in 1986. And it was under him, when he appointed Defense Minister Magnus Malan, who's now passed on, who started attacking Lusakas, the Maputos of this world, Maseru, raiding the neighboring countries, looking for the ANC guerrillas. It must have been scary a little bit as well for you at the time.
So we didn't think it would get to us, but I remember one time I was going to school, and I don't know whether they left a bomb in a dustbin on Cairo Road. I'm not sure how well you know Lusaka. And it blew up because one of the mad guys on the road tried to pick it up. I don't know what he was doing in the bin, That scared me. That's the closest I had ever come to this is real. And also a lot of conversation with the citizens saying, you know, do we deserve this? Should we not push back? And KK pushing back to say, this is what we need to do to liberate the rest
and
of
you were
Africa.
focused on your schools, and your
Yes.
mind was being opened up at the time.
Absolutely.
And we're talking about the 80s here, am I wrong?
Absolutely. That's
So
correct.
still at the time, nothing pops about mountaineering?
No, absolutely
Nothing.
not. No,
Right?
not
Up to
until
high school?
Yeah, not until 2012, actually.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
not
that
until
took
2012.
that long.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
no,
I'm very
yeah.
interested to know what changes in 2012. But before we get there,
Yes.
what did you study? I mean, you were at
Yeah.
school. Did you have a particular, you said you loved science and maths.
Yes.
Was a particular course that you were really
Yeah.
keen to study?
So I wanted to do medicine, but then changed and did accounting. So while I was waiting for my A-level results, I took a job, you know, and I was assisting this accountant, and I realized that, but this came easy for me. It's just plus and minus.
Is this after
And,
A levels?
After A levels,
Yeah.
and that's when I got exposed to Chartered Institute of Secretaries and Administrators, because that's what this lady had studied. I started doing that, and I went and did computers because there was this noise about Y2K, you know, and
Oh, this
it
is
was-
leading up to the
Yes,
2000. A lot
yes.
of madness around
Yeah,
that. eh?
exactly.
We thought the world was coming to an end.
Yeah. So then I decided, okay, maybe what I need to do is accounting and not necessarily computers, because those were the two things that I actually found interesting when I started working during my waiting for my A-level results. Yeah.
Yeah, so you did accounting.
I did accounting with a minor in computer programming,
Yeah.
MIS.
And then
Yeah.
after that?
After that, I came to South Africa. Then I went to Wits Business School, and I qualified as a chartered accountant, a chartered secretary.
General
and
Secretary.
administrator.
So we are
Yes.
slowly moving towards 2012.
Yes.
And I'm going to want to get there now as we
Yeah.
continue
Yeah.
our conversation. This is very interesting
Yeah.
to understand that when you were young, the mountains did not really mean much,
Yeah.
much to you.
No, can I just add? So the one thing that I haven't mentioned is growing up with my grandfather as an Adventist, there's a group called the Pathfinders. So initially it was called the MV. So all the kids were forced or maybe had an opportunity to join this club. It's like the Scouts.
Like the Boy Scouts.
Yes.
I was in
but
the Boy Scouts.
Yeah, but
I was in the
for
Boy Scouts in
church.
1967.
Yeah.
I hated it. I hated the Boy Scouts.
So in there, we went camping. There was a 2 weeks a year that we were forced to go camping, and the leaders were not user-friendly. They would take us to the bush and leave us in the middle of nowhere, and you needed to figure out where they are because they will cut branches in a certain way, and you get there, you are tired, you need to make your own place of to sleep, cook. So that is something that I always used to look forward to, but when you're there, you hate it. But next year, you want to go again. And we did a lot of knot tying, and really that's my first exposure to the outdoors.
Yeah, you see, that's a big difference between you and me. I hated not tying. Okay, now we know where the pathfinding Saray Khumalo began. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll discuss that as we continue.